We're speaking today with Wharton finance professor Franklin Allen about the falling yen and how that seems to have kicked off talk of a currency war. One immediate reaction to Japan's new stimulative economic policies has been a sharp drop in the yen. That's led to talk of beggar thy neighbor policies and a currency war among a number of global officials, including people in Russia and Europe now, most recently. Europe is increasingly worried that in addition to Japan, the U.S. and the UK and even Switzerland have policies that are holding down their currency, and that's making the euro stronger than it otherwise might be. And I think that Japan's policies have focused attention on that in a way that was not happening just a few weeks ago. How serious are these concerns, and what can you tell us about them?
Well, this whole issue of currency wars goes back quite a while now, when Brazil's finance minister coined the phrase for this issue. And I think in a number of emerging economies and in places like Switzerland and Norway and Sweden, what we've seen is inflows of money and strengthening of exchange rates. And in some places like Brazil, this has caused real problems for their manufacturing sector. In Switzerland, I think the government put the cap on because they were also worried that their manufacturing sector would be significantly hit. Japan is the first large economy to try to, I think, manage its exchange rate. They may not be doing that explicitly, but one of the major effects of the policies that Prime Minister Abe has said will introduce, and he is introducing, is to try and weaken the exchange rate. I think one of the things that has really hampered Japan a great deal over the last few years since the default of Lehman is that they have been regarded as a safe haven currency, and this has really hurt their industry a great deal. So if you compare Korea and Japan, they have similar kinds of industrial structures. But Korea, which allowed its exchange rate to drop a significant amount after the Lehman default, has done much, much better than Japan. And I think the Japanese want to try and prevent their economy being stalled by this very strong exchange rate. Now, the question is whether they'll go too far and they'll see an exodus of the money out of Japan. Now, one of the big issues is, why are people keeping money in Japan, given that its exchange rate may well weaken? It's gone down significantly already, but it may go down much, much more. If you look at the historical, even over the last decade, movement in the yen, it's ranged from 80 to 110, 120, depending on the time period you choose. But it could well weaken considerably more. And one wonders when people will start pulling their money out. There's a large proportion of the Japanese stock markets held by foreigners, a small but now significant 9-10% of the bond market is held by foreigners. But the real question is, what do Japanese investors see? Do they fully comprehend that their currency may weaken dramatically, and it might be a good idea from individual perspective, not necessarily from the nation's perspective, to take some of their money and put it overseas? And if we see that, then we could see some real instability in Japan. I think one of the other big issues is how other countries will react. I think the Germans are particularly worried. The Japanese car companies have not been as competitive because they've had to cut back R&D and all those kinds of things. And so if they start making more profits, which they are doing with these weaker yen, they may be able to start competing more effectively with the German car manufacturers. And I think that's why we've seen various German politicians and Jens Wiedmann of the Bundesbank start worrying about the overall effects of this.
And I believe Draghi has now come out and made some, at least veiled references to concerns about the level of the euro
Yes, he made some comments yesterday about that they would look and see what the long run effects on the currency were, because of course the euro has strengthened significantly. It then fell back a fair amount, so we'll see what happens.
But that's kind of a warning shot, isn't it? That more than 3 can play at this game, or however many are playing at it.
Yes, although I'd be surprised if the ECB got into that, but they may do.
Mm-hmm. And how big are the dangers that the currency war could erupt into the equivalent of a shooting war?
Well, it's an interesting question whether this is such a bad thing. That the folklore from the 1930s that we had these beggar thy neighbor policies, that when Britain went off the gold standard, then many other countries followed, and this led to a deflation, was very bad. I think the historical record is not so clear, and there are a number of papers that argue that, in fact, it would have been better if we'd had these realignments of exchange rates, in that it would have led to relative prices being much better, and that can benefit countries. So I think we'll see how it plays out this time.